Good morning, everyone. My name is Sterling Higa, Chairperson of the Authority. I'd like to call to order this November 5th, 2025 presentation public hearing of the Hawaii Community Development Authority. The time is now 11 a.m.
Thank you, Chair. The Hawaii Community Development Authority is holding today's public hearing both virtually on Zoom and in person. The Zoom link details were included in the public hearing notice. Therefore, members of the public are welcome to join us on Zoom or at the physical meeting site at the American Brewery Building, 547 Queen Street, second floor boardroom, Honolulu, Hawaii, 96813. The HCD communications staff is hosting the Zoom portion of this hearing. Once this public hearing begins, everyone will be muted for clearer audio. Board members, if you have any comments or questions, please unmute yourselves to speak. It is important that all individuals clearly state their name each time prior to speaking. If you are providing verbal public testimony, your name will be called accordingly. If you are attending in person, when your name is called, please come to the front of the room. And if you're attending virtually, please turn your video on only while providing your testimony. In either case, please clearly state your name and affiliation and proceed with your testimony. Oral testimony will be limited to 3 minutes and will be accepted only on matters directly related to the public hearing subject. If the authority's connection for the remote meeting is lost, the hearing will be recessed until the connection is restored. If the connection cannot be restored within 30 minutes, the hearing will be reconvened on Thursday, November 6, 2025 at 9 a.m. at the same physical location and virtual Zoom link as today's hearing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Let the record reflect that the following Kaka'ako members are present. Vice Chair Ishii is excused. Secretary Lidstone.
Ew.
Thank you. Member Miranda Johnson.
Here.
Thank you. Member Anderson.
Here.
Thank you. Member Evans.
Member Evans.
Thank you. Member Evans. Member Stripes.
Here.
Thank you. Member China.
Here.
Thank you. And Member Sakota.
Here.
Thank you, members. Individuals from the public who have requested to provide verbal public testimony on the proposed amendments to the Kaka'ako Mauka area rules are on standby and will be permitted to provide testimony respectively. Right.
Today's public hearing is being convened under the provisions of chapter 15-217 Mauka rules and 15-219 rules of practice and procedure, Hawaii administrative rules, and sections 1-28.5, 91-3, 92-41, and 206E 55.6 for revised statute. Excuse me, to consider the following matter. Amendment of HR chapter 15-217 relating to the Kaka'ako Mauka rules. The authority is conducting today's public hearing to present the rule amendments and collect public testimony. There will be no decision making. Public hearing notice was published in the Honolulu Star Advertising, Garden Owl, Hawaii Tribune Herald, and West Hawaii Today on Thursday, October 2nd, 2025. Hawaii News published the notice online on Saturday, October 4th, 2025. Chair.
Thank you, Craig. Let me briefly explain our procedure for today's public hearing. HCDA staff will present the staff report, followed by a summary of the Kapa'akai analysis. Following these presentations, board members will have an opportunity to ask questions and provide comments. Finally, we will take public testimony in the order that individuals have signed up. Individual comments will be limited to no more than 3 minutes. Only members of the authority will be permitted to ask questions of the public. Since each authority member has or will be given a copy of any written testimony that you may have provided, please refrain from reading your written testimony and instead summarize your comments in the time that you have available. When you are called, the communication staff will unmute your mic. Please clearly state your name and any organization that you are representing. I will be acting as the presiding officer for this hearing. Are there any questions as to our procedures? Seeing none, we will now begin our proceedings. Mr. Ryan Tam, Director of Planning and Development, will now present the staff report. Mr. Ryan Tam.
Thank you, Chair Higa and board members, if you'll permit me. This is.
Yeah.
Okay, before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the hard work of our team, past, present, and on leave currently, including Brandon, Nancy, Martin, Laura, John, Charlene, Keelan, Armaine, and Tommy Lynn, and Francine. Again, the team put a lot of effort into processing and reprocessing a lot of the certifications for almost 70 landowners and tenants, as well as contacting them individually. So it was a lot of work. I'd also like to acknowledge Executive Director Nakamoto in seeing the importance of industrial small businesses to the vitality of Kaka'ako. You do have the staff report in your packets, so I'll try to keep this summary brief. This slide, as you can see, is looking from Ward Avenue towards the west over Iwaniwai, Queen, and White House Streets, and shows the small business industrial area, which typifies the central Kaka'ako neighborhood zone, which we are discussing this morning. Ordinance 1621 was introduced by then Councilmember Carol Fukunaga and adopted by the Honolulu City Council in 2016 as a demonstration project to preserve small business industrial uses within a transit-oriented development zone. It did reduce real property tax valuations by 50% until June 30th, 2027. Our recent Mauka area rules raised the allowable density to a floor area ratio of 3.5 to help disincentivize on-site parking and promote more efficient infill development. But it did conflict with Ordinance 1621. HCDA staff worked with the city administration and city council members Nishimoto and Dos Santos Tam over the last few months to address this conflict. Bill 61 CD1 is one fix and is being considered by the Honolulu City Council today. As our understanding. Again, Ordinance 1621 applies to the essentially applies to the central Kaka'ako neighborhood zone, which you can see on the right here on this slide. The proposed amendments to the Mauka area rules are shown here in Ramsey format with the deletions crossed out and the additions underlined. These are also in your packets and is also posted online. Subsection C reverts the allowable floor area back to 1.5, essentially. Subsection D, which has changed since the publication of the original hearing notice, essentially allows the authority to waive the floor area limitations under various circumstances, such as if the city decides not to extend the property tax exemptions beyond 2027, for example. There's an associated figure in the rules, which would also need to update it to correctly reference a floor area ratio of 1.5. This is shown in table D on the right, as well as in footnotes. This is another slide which wasn't in the previous deck that was sent out. But we did receive 3 comments as of this morning. One from the State of Hawaii Department of Transportation Airports Division, another from the Honolulu Fire Department, and another from the Honolulu Police Department. The Honolulu Police Department did support the reduction in management of growth in this area, as well as a reduction of population density. And they do encourage developers to meet with the area neighborhood board, being support from constituents. To support the decision-making, Kapa'akai analysis was undertaken by Dr. Keha Watson and her team at Honua Consulting. The identification of cultural resources included research and ethnographic data, such as the 1855 La Paz map shown on the left. This map depicts shallow wetlands, salt pans, and fish ponds extending inland from an undeveloped shoreline, which is essentially Almana Boulevard. Kaka'ako once supported a complex system of natural waterways and cultural sites associated with pa'akai production and subsistence gathering, as well as traditional habitation. On the right, you can see the 1901 Montserrat map, which shows streets and industrial parcels already starting to replace much of the wetland environment. This 1952 aerial imagery shows the industrial warehouses and road grids dominating what were once cultural and ecological spaces. I'd like to also add that on the Eva side of Ward Avenue, so you can see that right here, kind of in the middle, you can see remnants of the residential character of Kaka'ako along Queen Street. You can see Mother Waldron Park and the homes along Lana Lane before it became warehouses and then expanded into park. The Kapa'akai analysis found that the regulatory action does not authorize ground disturbance, construction, or land alteration, and so no immediate impacts to Iwi Kupuna archaeological deposits or remaining cultural landscapes are anticipated. The consultant did note the importance of the Mauka Makai visual corridors in helping to preserve the spatial relationships central to Hawaiian cultural identity and the Ahupua'a system, and also noted the opportunity for HCA and the community to integrate cultural and interpretive planning before higher density development is reinstated in this area. The potential for the proposed action to affect or impair cultural resources is considered negligible, and no feasible action is required for this activity, as the proposed action does not reasonably have the potential to impact cultural resources. Subject to your questions, this concludes the summary of the staff report and the Kapa'akai analysis.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan Tam. Members, do you have any questions or comments? I see Member Evans.
Yes, Chair, thank you. Ryan, why is the proposal to have the authority vote on waivers rather than delegation to the executive director?
That is a comment that was brought up by our attorney generals in section 206 E 5.6, I believe is the citation, does not allow it requires the authority to make any determinations on variances from rules. So that's why the authority needs to make these such decisions, not the executive director. So I know in previous years, we were trying to grant more authority to the executive director to make these types of changes or allowances, but the reading of the statute requires that the authority actually make these decisions.
Okay, Chair, may I proceed?
Please.
Given that our statute does not allow for delegation to the executive director, and I think I heard that there were around 90 small industrial businesses in the central Kaka'ako area. what is your anticipation of how many of these might need a waiver? Given that we change it from 3.5 back to 1.54 until at least 2027, and possibly longer if the city council extends their tax reduction ordinance.
Maybe Chair,
Please.
I'll jump in here. So Member Evans, so for the real property tax year that starts on July 1st, 2026 to June 30th of 2027, the deadline for any of the eligible Central Kaka'ako landowners to submit an application for exemption was September 30th of this year. So that deadline has passed. So in essence, whoever was eligible and wanted to seek an exemption has, it had to have done it by September 30th. So if there's gonna be an extension of the June 30th sunset date, that extension will probably have to be taken up in early part of 2026 if they're gonna make it effective for the 2027-2028 real property tax year. Just because the deadline for filing the exemption, if the ordinance was extended, would be September 30th of 2026. So council would have to take that action to extend, and then there would be potentially 90 taxpayers who might seek that exemption. But
Is our, so the deadline was September 30th. Is our amendment retroactive to September 29th?
No, it's not, because as mentioned, we did as Ryan mentioned in his staff report, we issued like an interim certification letter, when this issue came up, and that took care of the exemptions that needed to be done. So it is not intended to go retro.
And not necessary, given that they've issued the interim certifications.
Yeah, that's not necessary.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Craig. That answers my question.
Thank you, Member.
Thank you, Member Evans. Members, any other comments or questions on this matter? Member Strikes.
Thanks, Chair. I was just seeking some clarification on the subsection D about the authority to waive the floor area. Just trying to get a better understanding of how that would work. So what, is there like a maximum that the authority could waive the FAR to, or is it just open-ended?
That was, our extent, so it's a little, granted, it's a little, vague here. I think our previous language was also vague. There is, portions of Central Kaka'ako is in the, does fall under the TOD, incentive zone. So in those cases, I think, they would, that TOD incentives would apply. Generally, our base zoning everywhere else in Kaka'ako is 5.5 FAR, floor area ratio. So that's essentially what would apply.
Okay, yeah, I was just curious because I noticed in the figure NZ.5 that it seems like a very large mismatch between how, I guess, we've regulated FAR to 1.5 or currently 3.5, but have allowable heights up to 400 feet. Is that like sending conflicting messages?
I think that, that is kind of one issue that we would need to address at some point.
Okay, and then going back to that subsection D, assuming the authority waives the floor area, does that mean that it would include parking in the calculation, or is that
Yeah.
just to be determined by the authority's action?
No, I think our intention, as in the language, as stated, is that, if we were to move away from the 1.5 floor area ratio, that we would go to our current definition of our current
3.5.
definition, calculation of floor area, which does include, parking
On-
off-street parking structures and driveways. Above grade off-street parking structures and covered loading driveway areas.
Okay, and then, you mentioned Bill 61, 2025 before the city council today for
Yes,
final
I do.
reading and approval. So assuming that passes and the mayor signs it into law, it looks like that does kind of rectify the issue by allowing the exemption for up to 3.5. And so I'm still not understanding why we're doing this, especially since the sunset in that same bill was not changed past 2027. It's just,
So, member strikes, when this issue came up, there was really no shortage of people on our side, staff, as Brian mentioned, and no shortage of people on the city side, including council members Nishimoto and Dos Santos Tan, budget services, and city administration that wanted to, correct this problem in the interim so that these exemptions could be looked at and possibly granted. So there was just work on both sides to, craft some kind of solution, and we were both working towards the same goal of trying to fix this. At the same time, I think there was uncertainty on both sides, including on my part. That Bill 61, even though it's being heard today by the city council for third reading, whether that would make it through third reading, I'm thinking it's gonna make it through, and then also hoping the mayor will sign it, and hoping he will, not saying he won't, but, and then on our side, I think there was some uncertainty of the city side as to how the outcome of, these, hearings, public hearings, not to presume any action by the Kaka'ako board on where we would go. So they were trying to craft a solution. And as you can see by Bill 61 CD1, they crafted a solution where would accept something FARs up to 3.5 because they didn't know if we were gonna make the rule change or not. Now, I've been told by city council that if they do extend the sunset beyond June 30th, 2027, it's gonna be at the FAR of 1.5, not 3.5 as stated in Bill 61 CD1. It's gonna be 1.5. So I think in the abundance of caution and being ready for a possible city council action to extend the sunset date in some form. I don't know if it's gonna be just the 1621, another amendment or another related amendment or some other bill. I just wanted us as the agency to be ready for that possible extension. So have the rules, the FAR for the Central Kaka'ako reduced to 1.5 with the ability of the authority to, waive it and go back to, as Ryan mentioned, 3.5. So it's just kind of in the abundance of being prepared, member strikes. And I know when I say it that way, it sounds more confusing than it is, but it really was two parties, multiple parties trying to fix this solution and not knowing where each other was gonna end up on this.
Okay, and so you don't think it's necessary for this current proposal before us to have a sunset date or some sort of automatic expiration tied to like
I don't,
city council bill?
yeah, I don't think so, because I think the language proposed in subsection D3, while it is general in nature, I think it gives us enough flexibility to pivot and then to in case by, let's say, June or July of next year, the city council decides not to extend the sunset date, we can take action through rulemaking to make the change. That would be my recommendation. I know it's convoluted. I know it sounds confusing, member strikes, but I've been adamant about this from the beginning, that one, we have to help the small businesses, in central Kaka'ako, because just the possibility that this exemption wasn't going to be granted had sent some ripple effects through that community, because a lot of them are very small businesses, repair shops, it's very small margins, so to absorb that kind of full tax payment would be hard. Secondly, through our rulemaking effort previously, this was done, and so I took it sort of accountability personally to make sure that this got corrected, and maybe it was belt and suspenders my approach to this, but I really wanted to make sure that we address this, because this has occurred because of our rulemaking. So that's sort of my guiding principles in this, and it is belt and suspenders for sure.
Okay, no, I appreciate that description. I think that helps paint a, better picture of how dynamic your approach is.
Yeah, and yeah, thank you, member Straits. Appreciate the understanding.
Thank you, member Straits. Member Evans.
Yes, and so I support the recommendation because it creates a safety net for those small businesses, no matter what various levers get pulled between now and 2027 or don't get pulled. So I think it's as Executive Director Nakamoto said, it's an effort to support those businesses, not knowing exactly what's going to happen between now and then. I have a question for Ryan. Was the original adoption of the 3.5 including parking designed to force a transition to this area to consolidate parcels and go to higher densities? In other words, getting rid of those small businesses?
No, I'd say just the opposite. So the previous studies had previous staff, previous analyses of structured parking in Kaka'ako showed that parking was equivalent to about 1.7, to 2 FAR, floor area ratio. So when we adjusted our definition district-wide of the floor area ratio to include parking, we wanted to keep everybody whole. So that's why we increased the FAR of all the districts by 2. And that's just to make sure that the businesses and property owners weren't kind of penalized by us changing how we calculate the floor area ratio. I think I would say, there were previous ideas to just raise the height limits to 400 feet on along in central Kaka'ako, like through the entire district. But we wanted, at least for now, we want to make sure that that we adhere to the 2011 Kaka'ako Master Plan, which does recognize that Central Kaka'ako, you know, the scale of it is historic, as well as the uses are very important to creating a balanced and vital neighborhood. So.
Okay, so we're not creating a regulatory framework, or we didn't with the 3.5 framework that would have forced the property values up beyond what the small businesses could afford to stay in business, either with lease rents or ownership.
Yeah, that was certainly not our intent. You know, I think
400 feet would do it. If and I'll address this to Melissa, if airports and FAA would even allow us to go to 400 feet in the one engine inoperable. What's the OEAA stand for, Melissa? I've heard the OEI, but
I need to double check what that actually stands for myself, Mary Alice, but I think because of the amount of air traffic that goes through that, it might be very difficult for us to support. We'd have to
Good.
change a lot of flight patterns.
yeah, thank you for putting in that testimony in writing so that it is a, you know, it advance heads up to, you know, anyone who might be looking at, you know, those higher heights. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Chair. I don't have any further comments.
Thank you, Member Evans.
Thank you, Member Evans. Members, any other comments or questions? Put on our belt and suspenders for public testimony. As of today, the HCDA has received 3 written testimonies, all for comments only, since the notice of public hearing was published on October 2nd and 4th, 2025, and written testimony was invited. We will now take verbal public testimony in the following order: persons who signed up prior to the meeting date, persons present in the physical location, and persons online in the Zoom meeting. Speakers will be called upon to testify in the order in which they have signed up. Public testimony will be limited to 3 minutes each. Since each authority member has or will be given a copy of any written testimony that you might have provided, please refrain from reading your written testimony and instead summarize your comments in the time that you have available. When you are called, please clearly state your name and any organization that you are representing. How many people do we have pre-signed up to provide testimony? None. So we will move now to persons present in the physical meeting location who would like to testify. Is there anyone who would like to testify? Please, yeah, and be sure to introduce yourself prior to your testimony.
And your affiliation.
Robert Spear with the Honolulu Kapuna Shed, and with a new organization in this central Kaka'ako area. Anything dealing with density is something that we're interested to see what the impacts are for our potential opportunities to be here. And I express the pleasure and opportunity to be here to have a better understanding of it, but we don't have a position at this point because we're just learning what the rules are. But thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify online?
None, Chair.
All right, we will close public testimony and allow.
And adjourn the hearing.
Yeah, we have adjourned the hearing. All right, since there's no public testimony, I'll proceed to close today's hearing. If there are no further comments or discussion, then on behalf of the HCDA authority members and staff, I thank you for your attendance. A decision-making hearing will be held tomorrow, November 6th, 2025 at 9 a.m. virtually on Zoom and at the physical meeting site. Public hearing now stands adjourned. The time is now 11:34 a.m. Thank you, board members.
Thank you, members.
Thank you.
Thank you.